Hi everyone, welcome. I just came from my freezer, and the lucky recipients of this assortment of yummy foods is the VermiBag Mini, where we celebrated a milestone event last time we were in here 12 days ago. 12 days ago, the system had reached 500 days in service. And we didn't really go out of our way to mark the event. The feeding was pretty routine. It was really nothing more than just an honorable mention. And another thing we did in here recently, which I really liked, was the way we sort of collected up all this top dressing leafy matter that got spilled out here last time as sort of almost like a mulch layer. Sort of set this stuff aside, and then when we finally get around to tilling up the material down in the system, blending this stuff in. And to make that even better, what I did last time was I blended it in with a whole bunch of moisture. So I had my water bottle on hand, as I do now too. I could just grab my wand and start spraying with this thing. I even charged it up with a few pumps just to make sure I can get some good action from it. But I don't want to prematurely assume that we're going to need additional moisture just because of how generous we were last time. So I figured, yes, we'll blend in all this lovely leafy matter, but if the material's already damp enough, we're not going to go overboard. But I somehow had this feeling like going overboard would not be an issue if we came back in here really generous with the moisture again. You know why? Because you don't have to go far to find a little pocket of fairly dry stuff, especially out here around the edges against the wall of the fabric bag. So I think we're going to do exactly what we did last time, is before we sink down into the center to see how the last feeding came along, we're simply going to start blending in all of this really nice leafy matter, while at the same time introducing a good bit of moisture to it. And I'm convinced that this is something that's really good for the system. I just kind of have this feeling like it's a really healthy way to go. And it is kind of nice that each time I upturn a handful of material, even though there's a little bit of dryness up against the edge of the bag, not far from there, I'm almost guaranteed to encounter a couple worms, at least. Perhaps just testing their limits or their bravery up against the somewhat dry material. I guess the other thing I've been interested in doing here is to be generous with the moisture in the hopes that some of it makes its way down into lower levels of the system, so that the castings that we've pretty much put within, not within, but out of reach. We put ourselves out of reach of the stuff that's at the very bottom of this system. Not with any sort of a physical barrier preventing us from getting down in there, but more of just sort of a rule that we've established for ourselves to not interfere with that stuff that's down low. And I guess the whole idea there is that hopefully it'll eventually sort of solidify into a block of material that will stay put if and when we finally get around to harvesting the material, opening up the hatch at the bottom and hoping that the contents of the system don't come spilling out. So it just seems to me like sitting here spraying this thing continuously over the course of, I don't know how long that was, probably a minute or two at least, perhaps longer, feels to me like we've dispensed a fair bit of moisture out around the edges, which I think the system is going to appreciate. And now we can pop in on how their feeding from last time is progressing. This is a little piece of pumpkin stem, and it must have gone in pretty recently because it's certainly tough, strong, hard material. But there's another pumpkin stem in here that actually is almost 100 days older in terms of how long it's been in service than the bag itself, because it actually came with the worms from their previous home. So hiding here within this pile of worms is the pumpkin stem I'm referring to. Can you see it? It's sticking out right here, the top of the pumpkin stem. And there's a whole lot of interest, a lot of worm traffic all over it, which I don't think is accidental, because we usually place the yummy foods that we're giving them right on top of this thing to try to promote more and more worm traffic. And I think I even made a comment during the last video saying, hey, I should look up how old this thing is. And I had done it once before. After I re-listened to myself saying that, I was like, wait a second, we just figured that out not too long ago. In fact, I even created a little day counter in my spreadsheet to keep tabs on how long the that huge pumpkin stem's been in service. So the magic number is always an equation that we can easily apply to simply the age of this system. So the system is now 512 days old, and the pumpkin stem, the huge pumpkin stem, has been in service for exactly 98 days longer than that. So 610 days basically. And I mean, if you saw this thing when it started out, it was much larger. And here and there, I just carefully, attempt to not break bits and pieces off of it. But once in a while, I just accidentally bump into it and a little piece chips off or something. But, all other foods in here, I believe, are fair game to being kind of crushed and broken up and helped along to the finish line if possible. But with something like that, I'm more inclined to just keep my hands off of it and just let nature take its course, and we'll see how long it takes for it to just eventually become unrecognizable, unfindable in the system. I have a feeling it's still got a long ways to go. All right, let's press on. So I've got more leafy matter. I'd like to definitely apply some more leafy matter out across the top after we feed and pack everything away and level things off, because it is so nice blending all that material in and just having all that leafy matter throughout the bedding. It just seems like the way to go, That's just my impression. So even before we put the food in, I'll sprinkle a little bit of the grit in here on top of the old stuff. This to me looked like it was these two pieces of, definitely cantaloupe rinds. There's one more piece of that coming in with today's food. And I set the feeding zone indicator aside because I don't have a replacement feeding zone indicator. But here's another piece of cantaloupe. So we'll have more rind to look out. Here's a plum. Yeah, this plum definitely had some major bruising on it. And stuff out of an assortment of very old and forgotten about soup greens. So there's various vegetables in there. I just pulled out a couple of these carrots, an orange carrot and seemingly a purple carrot, I think. There's potato peels, there's chunks of pepper in here, and perhaps a few other things. And it had a good bit of weight to it, because when I lifted it up, it felt like it was a substantial meal for them. So that's pretty much our check-in. I don't know, should we be even more generous? We could give them a bit more, but let's not forget we're even piling in more bedding at the end as a top coating of leaves. So what do you think? I've got a feeling that this generous moisture thing is the way to go. Here and there we just bump into these piles of worms and they all look so happy and healthy and plump, and the moisture is key to happy and healthy worms, or at least so it appears to me. Let's bring in some leafy matter. Bring back the plastic top covering, and we'll be done. All there's left to do really around here, just cleaning things up, putting things away, but I'm not going to keep you around for that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.